Hello and welcome to another Blythe Crafts video. I'm Beth and this is Beth Ramsden Crafts. Today I've decided to use this lovely furry fabric to make a onesie or a kigurumi for my Blythe. I've been trying to design a pattern and I have made this test piece in some stripy jersey fabric. I'm still not 100% sure about the hood because I want it to sit in a particular way, but I've got a pattern shape now and I think it will work. I'm having a zip at the front. It's a doll scale mini zip. I will put a link in the description to where I bought it and the fabric as well. I did consider putting in a pocket, but I've decided against it for this one. I'm going to have a contrast tummy piece though. It'll be sewn onto the front like this. We will need 2 tummy pieces in pink and 2 front body pieces in purple, with 1 of each reversed. I'm careful to make sure the direction of the fur is going down for each piece as well. I can position the tummy pieces like this, and then I'm going to baste stitch them on with a running stitch. When I baste stitch, I like to finish it off with a French knot, and then it's easy to remove when you're done because it's not knotted through the fabric. I've gone round the overlapping edge only with a zigzag machine stitch. The centre seam and the neckline are still open. And now I'm trimming away the purple fabric to reduce any bulk. Next, I'm going to cut out the back body piece. It's just the same as the front, but without the extra flap for the zip. I just fold it back as I trace around. Here are the body pieces, and now we'll attach the zip. It will sit just like this, but it will be sewn to this flap. So I just open it out to see how it will line up. Here, I've left a little space so I can fold over the collar edge. You can see I've basted it on before I sew it again. I will machine stitch close to the zipper, but not too close, otherwise it could stop it from working. Here, it's sewn in and the zip opens fine. Again, we check the position and lay our zip on the other front piece. Baste stitch it on and be sure that the edges of our belly pieces line up too. You don't want these to be misaligned. Now, with both sewn in, we can remove the baste stitches. If you wanted, you could trim back this pink fabric behind the zip tape and use some double-sided interfacing or fabric glue to stick the zip tape down if it bothers you. Next, we'll sew the bottom front seam from the zip to the crotch. I fold it flat and pin it. And I will sew along here, being sure to come in front of the zip a little way to enclose it behind the seam. It should look like this when it's opened out. You could hand sew this if you're worried about getting too close to the zip with the machine. Now I lay the back and front together and sew together the shoulder seams. I'm just leaving a few millimeters for the seam allowance. The jersey fabric doesn't really fray, so I don't have any need for fray check or glue on the cut edges. Next, I'll cut out my 2 sleeve pieces. I make sure that the pile of the fur, the direction is facing down the way for both again. Imagine how it's being worn, and you'd want everything to point down to the ground. I'm sewing them in next. So I carefully baste them in first. Repeat again for the other sleeve. and then machine stitch them and remove your temporary stitches. Here I've got some light interfacing. It's the iron-on stuff, so it has a rough side with the adhesive. I place it with that facing up the way. I trim it roughly, just enough to extend beyond the collar. This will be our collar facing piece. I just pin it on and then I roughly baste around where I want to sew. And I will be cutting along the front opening and trimming around the middle. Here I've sewn just outside of the basting, and now I can trim it and remove these basting stitches. I carefully fold inward all of the interfacing. It catches the edges and tucks them in underneath. And I pin it into place before I iron on the underside to fix it in place. Here it is all stuck down and it looks very neat on the outside. Now I want to cut out my cuff pieces for the sleeves. Now I don't have any matching plain jersey fabric to use, so I'm going to try using the wrong side of this pink fabric instead. It does have a lot of stretch in one direction, but not in the other, so I have to make sure I orient the cuff direction right so it has the stretch. I've cut out a rectangle. It's 3 centimeters wide and it's the length of the opened out sleeve. I've checked against the Blythe wrist and I know that I need half this length for the cuff. It folds over to become 1.5 centimeters wide, and it's now half the size of the sleeve. Here I check it again on the arm. It's always best to check your specific fabric type against the doll like this, so you don't have cuffs that are too loose or too tight, because there's not a lot of leeway with miniature sewing and the stretch of your particular fabric could vary. I'm sewing a running stitch to gather up the sleeve so it will best fit the cuff. I pin each end of the folded cuff in with the raw edges all lined up. Then I gather the middle up and I try to neatly disperse it. And then I pin it in the middle. I will hand stitch this bit just using a back stitch to keep it neat, and again I'm just leaving a few millimeters for my seam allowance. It looks nice folded out. Just remove the running stitch and repeat for the other sleeve. Fold the whole thing over now, right sides in, and pin along the sides from the cuff to the leg. I'll machine stitch along here and then repeat on the other side. There we go. Now I can open each leg out flat to attach their cuffs. I repeat the same steps as before, checking what length I need to comfortably fit over the foot. It turns out to be half the total ankle seam size again. So I cut out my rectangles, 3 centimeters wide again, and I gather up and pin them before hand stitching both into place. Now I pin from ankle to ankle around the crotch, I machine stitch around here. Now make sure to open up your zip first so you can turn it inside out afterwards. Here's our onesie so far. This might be as far as you need to go if you were making a separate hat or a headband for your own doll, but I want a hood. And if you didn't spot it before, it's a bunny I'm making, so there are ear pieces to be cut, as well as the hood. I need to cut 2 flipped pieces, 1 middle piece, and 4 ear pieces. I'm using 2 purple and 2 pink. Again, the pile direction is all facing down the way, including the ears, which I want to be floppy. Put these right sides together and sew around, leaving one end open. Then turn them the right side out. For the hood, I pin the right sides together, starting from each end and then working in. I sew one side, and then I pin and sew the other. This is where I realise I've forgotten to sew my ears into those seams. There is always something that goes wrong. Okay. Looking back at my pattern piece, I have marked where I want the ears sewn in. I've unpicked the stitches in between these pins, and I want to fold 1/3 of the ear over like this, with the pink side on the inside. Then work out which way this should sit. Insert it inside the hood. The raw edges will be poking out of the hole here. The pink ear side is facing against the side of the hood. You can see how I want it to look here. I unpick the other side and position the other ear and pin it into place. I double check that they're sitting nicely before I sew them. And now they're stitched in. I can check it with the body. I want to sew a face on here. I pin up the hem to see how it will look once it's lined. I cut out some felt shapes to lay out and I test some different positions. Maybe whiskers? Nah, but definitely a higher nose. Yes. I fetch my embroidery threads and I rummage for some nice blues to sew with. I don't want black for the nose. I pin the eyes on first, and then with the embroidery thread I catch the eye with a stitch, and then I sew a satin stitch around and around the eyes, just following the shape of the felt. Once I'm done, I knot and cut the thread on the inside, and repeat for the other eye. For the nose, I sew the top line, then I remove the felt and I just stitch in the triangle shape before covering it up using the satin stitch. The mouth is simply a loop that I catch in the middle and stitch to the nose. It's called a fly stitch. I knot and cut the thread to finish. Now, I want to line the hood, so I cut out some cotton fabric pieces, just as before for the main hood, and assemble in the same way, minus the ear panic. Now to join the hood, just have the right sides facing and put the lining inside the hood like this. I pin all around and I plan to leave this section at one side open to turn through. I then sew around the rest, following this neckline shape too. Now it's all sewn up and I'll turn it through. Poke out all the edges and fold in the opening, sew it closed with a ladder stitch. Now I can sew the hood to the body. I first loosely baste stitch it together just to make sure the edges all line up, and then I hand stitch around the outside with a ladder stitch first. I knot and cut, then I pull out the baste stitching, and then I sew neatly around the inside seam. Voila! All we need now is a tail. I'm using one of these little pom-pom doohickeys to form my white yarn tail. I wrap wool around both halves and close it. I trim both sides. I tie around the middle with a double strand of wool and remove. I trim the pom-pom down with scissors, and I use a couple of pins like this to fluff and tease at the ends to make it more dense. Lovely! Now, with a wool needle, I just pull all 4 ends of the knot inside the body, and then I knot and trim the ends in place. So, what do you think? I think it is so cute! I love it! But I do still want to tweak that hood. I want to make it a bit bigger still. I have tried it on some different Blythes. It fits both body types that I have, no problem. I think I just want the hood to flop over more at the front. I think I might just add a section to the front here. I don't know. Well, I enjoyed this enough to want to come back to it later, with a tweaked pattern. I have some more colours of this fur to sew with, and I quite fancy making a Pusheen cat Kigu next time. What do you think? If I get the hood just right next time, then I will offer up the pattern for you to use yourselves. But do feel free to use what you see here to have a go now. Share your makes on Instagram or Facebook and tag me. I love all your nice comments and feedback. Thank you all for watching. Please give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't yet. I'll be back in a fortnight with something new. So I look forward to seeing you then. Take care and bye bye.